Hello, everyone. At major communication summits held over recent years, even at that big winter sports event held at the beginning of 2022, more and more people have been talking about IPv6 enhanced technologies. So what's going on? We're lucky to have Robin Lee, member of the IETF Internet Architecture Board and Huawei's chief IP expert, join us today to help us figure it all out.
I'm Robin Lee. I've been engaged in R&D at Huawei for the last 21 years. In 2009, I started working on IP innovation research and promoting IETF standards.
To begin, could you tell us what IPv6 Enhanced actually is?
Simply put, it's a technology that extends IPv6 to support a series of new network applications, including SRv6, network slicing, in-band flow measurement, BEER v6, and APN6.
What's the precise relationship between IPv6 and IPv6 Enhanced?
Quite simply, IPv6 is the basis of IPv6 Enhanced. We can't directly jump to IPv6 Enhanced without IPv6. Instead, IPv6 Enhanced is developed on an IPv6 foundation. It then supports the new network applications I just mentioned through extensions.
As the basis for developing IPv6 Enhanced, how did IPv6 itself emerge?
IPv6 is most widely known due to its address space. With IPv4, the address space is only 32 bits long and clearly insufficient. IPv6 has a much larger address space of 128 bits. It's been said that IPv6 can assign an address to every grain of sand on Earth. But this is just one of three reasons why IPv6 emerged. Another is that the shortcomings in the IPv4 design needed to be resolved, and necessary optimization and extension needed to be implemented through IPv6 in anticipation of future requirements.
Could you give us an example of the shortcomings that IPv6 resolves?
In IPv4's design, the header is complex and has too many fields. This negatively affects forwarding performance. In contrast, IPv6 boosts hardware processing and improves forwarding performance by significantly reducing the number of header fields. In addition, IPv4 processes only IPv4 headers. That makes it difficult for IPv4 to support new functions due to its poor extensibility. And this is precisely why IPv6 was designed to include IPv6 extension headers. These extension headers are used to support new network applications and service features supporting future development.
Although IPv6's development began slowly, it's currently booming. How precisely does IPv6 Enhanced develop upon IPv6?
This has a lot to do with what we just talked about. The development of IP network technologies is driven by applications. The emergence of new applications drives technological development. Conversely, it's very difficult for a technology to develop if it provides only technological changes, but not better applications. For example, there are methods that can be used to solve the IPv4 address space problem, and this caused the development of IPv6 to slow down. However, important work was done during IPv6's design, namely IPv6 extension headers. During the design period, the goal was to support new functions by using these extension headers for the new applications that would emerge in the future. But for about 20 years, the extension headers were of little use since there wasn't a good application for them. Then, around 2017, two very important applications emerged: 5G transport and the cloud. Both opened the space for the use of IPv6 extensions. And we can summarize the technical requirements of 5G and the cloud in regard to IPv6 like this. 5G changes the attributes of connections, the cloud changes the scope of connections.
Yes, I've heard that before. Can you explain its meaning to us?
When we say that 5G changes the attributes of connections, we mean that for 5G to support new applications such as deterministic networking and network slicing, it requires some new attributes and encapsulation in the forwarding plane of connections. And these new attributes can only be encapsulated through IPv6 extension headers. And when we say that the cloud changes the scope of connections, we mean that in the past, network connections were established between physical devices with fixed locations. However, since the emergence of the cloud, these devices can be deployed on or off cloud. As such, connections need to be established between devices on the cloud and between devices employed on and off cloud. This requires a super convenient method to establish connections.
And this convenient method is to establish connections through IPv6, correct?
Exactly. Over the past 20 years, we've used MPLS on transport networks. However, MPLS often needs to be upgraded across the entire network, making it very difficult to quickly set up connections. To achieve better connections, we need to return to IP and establish connections based on native IP. We need to establish connections based on simple IP to adapt to changes in the scope of connections. In addition, we need an extensible technology to encapsulate new attributes in order to cope with changing connection attributes. If you look at these two things together, you'll see that IPv6 is a unique choice, and we have developed IPv6 Enhanced by extending IPv6 to better support 5G and cloud services. While we aimed to drive IPv6 deployment through address space issues over the past 20 years, we now have IPv6 extension headers to support new 5G and cloud applications. To reflect this change, we choose to call it IPv6 Enhanced.
After IPv6 Enhanced was proposed, has its boundary been defined? For example, how do we know that we achieved the proposed vision?
IPv6 Enhanced is an open system, so its boundaries change with application requirements and technological development. So far, it doesn't have a determined boundary. Currently, the most important vision of IPv6 Enhanced is to provide better services for 5G in the cloud. In the future, though, there may be new applications. At that time, new extensions and innovations may be required for IPv6, meaning that IPv6 Enhanced will be extended and developed accordingly.
Thank you, Robin, and thank you for joining us.